What is going on, everyone? Hope you're all doing well. Today we are going to be getting a look at the PC port for WWE 2K23. That's right, these games are a bit of a mixed bag when it comes to the PC ports in terms of their features and stuff. They have come a long way from the past. They're still not perfect, but the game overall for 2K23 is definitely a step in the right direction. 2K22 was a step in the right direction, really. They took a year off in 2021, which they needed, I believe, and they really did help to sort of revamp this franchise, and they made good progress last year, and this looks to continue that formula along with the franchise. So I'll talk a little bit about that, as well as some of the caveats to the PC port of this game, which were very similar to the ones from last year. So let's get into it. But first, today's video is brought to you by SuperCDK.com, where you could save money on games for all of your favorite platforms, as well as software like Windows 10 Pro licenses for just $22, and then you can unlock the prestigious Dark Mode for Windows 10, which I honestly could not live without. It is blinding without the dark mode. You guys need it in your life. And now you can also save an additional 25% off at checkout by clicking Buy Now on any software products over there. Just go ahead and add it into your cart and put in my code JP25 at checkout and apply, and that'll bring our price from $22.44 all the way down to $16.83, a savings of over $5. And I'll walk you through how to get your key and install it on Windows 10. Go ahead and click Submit Order and complete your checkout from there. For me, that's going to be with PayPal, and then click on Pay Now. After completing the checkout, it'll bring you to your purchased order page, and it will update in a matter of seconds, or just go ahead and hit F5. Go ahead and do that one time. It came through literally immediately. I got the payment email that it had gone through and the delivery of the product exactly at the same time. Once you're done with that, go ahead and click on View Keys and Codes, and we'll get our code right here that we can go ahead and copy and paste in on Windows 10 by hitting the Start button and type in the word Activate. When you see that activation settings or see if Windows is activated, go ahead and click on that, and it'll bring up this right here, and click on Change Your Product Key or Unlock Windows 10. As I already have Windows 10, I obviously don't need to put in a new key, but just paste it in and then go ahead and click Next, and you are all done and set. For more information on SuperCDK.com as well as the coupon code, be sure to check out the links down in the description below. So first things first, right off the bat, just like with 2K22, 2K23 on the PC is locked to 60 frames per second, which is not the end of the world for a kind of game like this. I mean, I do give them a little bit of leeway because I'm a wrestling fan, and honestly, there's not really any other serious options here for a modern wrestling game that includes, all of the big names and the characters that we know, that maybe some of us know and love from the 80s and the 90s, which is really why I like to play these games, is to sort of, revisit and play out some of those old matches and the My Rise mode and all of that. So I do give them some leeway when it comes with the PC ports in this, but I'm going to pass you guys along all the information either way. So the gameplay is capped at 60 frames per second, so that's unfortunate. The cutscenes are also capped to 30 frames per second. So entrances, when players are coming to the ring, or whenever there's a cutscenes like during the My Rise mode or anything like that, you're going to be capped at 30 frames per second on those. So that is a big caveat here with the PC port. But if you're okay with that, then there's not really too much else to complain about. And you can see that it is capped to 60 FPS because it has a built-in benchmark, which is nice that they do include a benchmark, although it's kind of pointless. Like I said, it's capped to 60 frames per second, and it's showing my 4090 is under 40% usage, but it also has a frame counter in the top right, which is sort of pointless, and it ends up telling me that I'm getting like an average of around 180 frames per second. How they're getting that number, I don't really know, because the GPU isn't being fully pushed, unless I could actually hit 180 frames per second with the 4090 at under 40%, which I suppose is possible, but also a monumental feat in terms of optimization, to which I must say kudos to the developers behind 2K23. But nice that they include a benchmark nonetheless. But I think a wide variety of people are going to be able to run this game at, whatever resolution they play at. Recommended requirement is like an RX 580 for AMD, so take from that what you will. Jumping into the graphics options, we do not have a ton of options in here, but there are a fair few that you can sort of go ahead and mess with. We've got texture quality here, which can either be set to standard or high if you want to. That's the highest that it goes. So it only has the two options there, standard or high. You can play in windowed mode, or you can play it full screen. It doesn't seem like there's a borderless windowed, just windowed on or off, or you can play in full screen. there's an action camera FPS. Now, when I first saw this, I thought that it meant it would uncap cutscenes and entrances to 60 frames per second, but no, these are the cutscenes that happen in the middle of the match. So this is actually nice that they put this in, because last year, those scenes were capped at 30 frames per second, and essentially, sometimes you'll do certain maneuvers, moves during a match, or finishers where it'll cut to a more cinematic perspective so you can see the move sort of play out. And with this, it is capped at 60 frames per second rather than 30, which it was last year. So imagine playing at 60 and all of a sudden it's 30 for like a little mini cutscene and then right back to 60. It was kind of jarring. So with this year round, they at least fixed that. So that's a step in the right direction. I do appreciate them doing that. I just wish they extended it also to entrances for the wrestlers as well as all cutscenes to cap those at 60 and not 30, which I think would just give the game better continuity overall. We've also got model quality here, which I have up at high, or you could set it to standard. Again, only the two options there. Shadows are either on or off, but then we have shadow quality, which can do low, medium, high, or ultra. Also the same for shader quality. For anti-aliasing, we've got temporal anti-aliasing, FXAA, or off. So that's all we got there. So I was using the TAA. We've also got reflections, which go up to high, off, low, or medium. So I was running those the highest that they go. And before we get to dynamic upscaling, I'm just going to quickly show they do have depth of field and motion blur. I did leave depth of field on because it only seems to work during cutscenes, and it's appropriate when it is used. And motion blur I just got rid of entirely because it's not necessary. For dynamic upscaling, so we either have linear, which is just playing at native resolution, or the game actually supports FSR1, which is interesting because then they only have a sharpness option here, and they don't have an option for like quality FSR or performance FSR or balanced or whatever. It's just FSR, and you can set the sharpness. So I don't really know entirely what that means or if it's even really FSR. Little interesting, but it's there, I suppose. So that's the graphics options. So with graphics options out of the way, usually at this point I would talk a little bit more about performance, but honestly, there's really not that much to discuss. I mean, the game runs smooth as silk. On the very first load up, on the first benchmark that I ran, it had a couple of stutters and hitches here and there, but that's just because it's a DirectX 12 title. It was loading in assets for the very first time. And, you know, once I had the game up and running, it just ran completely smooth at a locked 60 frames per second, which was not an effort required at all. By the 4090 for 4K native maxed out. These games aren't that taxing to run, so I really wouldn't worry too much about performance. But if you haven't played one of these games in a few years and you think you might have an issue with the fact that it's capped at 60 FPS or cutscenes are capped at 30, then, you know, that might be something that stands out to you on whether or not you want to pick it up. If you are someone that has already played, let's say, 2K22 last year, and you enjoyed your time with that, and you want to know if it's worth picking up this one again for, you know, another full $60 or $70, is it going to be worth it? I guess it really depends on how much time and you know how much you put into the WWE games. For me, I was a little hesitant at first, but I was really glad that I did pull the trigger, and I got like the 3-day early access version on my PS5. And so far, I've been very happy with it. The combat and everything is all pretty much the same, although I think they have done a lot in terms of the input lag is much better improved, especially in terms of the online play. It's almost non-existent, whereas 2K22 was almost completely unplayable. The animations, I think, are a lot better in terms of the way the characters get up off the mat. They go a little bit slower at times, but it seems more realistic to what you would see in a real WWE match. The other mode that I've spent most of my time in is the My Rise mode, which so far I have been enjoying immensely. I think they do a significantly better job with the My Rise mode this year versus last year, where you were just starting out as making any sort of creative character. This year you kind of have two paths you can choose. There's either the Lock or the Legacy, which is basically a male or a female character, but they have completely different narratives. And because they sort of have this preset narrative that you can, there's a few alternating paths that you can take, but I think because they stuck with like the personality traits of like this character that they have built up called the Lock, not the Rock, the Lock, because he's like a lock to become the next champion, or the Legacy character who has a parent who was a former wrestler, so they have a lot to live up to. Because of that, I feel like the storylines play out a lot closer to what you would see on television versus, it being kind of janky and not really feeling very cohesive. Overall, I feel like the storylines play out a lot better, and it just makes watching the story and seeing it all unfold and, your rise as a character sort of feel a lot better. And there's just also other things that they've done, like adding in being able to carry 2 championship belts that's awesome to see, because, and also sometimes like in 2K22 in the My Rise, if you were a champion and you came out to the ring and it was not a championship match, you didn't carry your belt, which made no sense to me, because in all the other modes, like in Universe and whatever, if you had a championship, you would carry it to the ring regardless of whether you were defending it or not. And in the My Rise mode, that was not the case in 2K22, at least when I played it when the game first came out. So in this one, they do carry the title out to the ring every single time, whether they're defending it or not. And you can carry multiple titles if you happen to win more than one, which you most likely will. So all that kind of stuff just makes it feel more, like I said, it gives it that more sense of reality in terms as far as real as wrestling can be. But in terms of the presentation, like, it makes it feel more like something you would actually see in WWE, rather than sort of having to fill in the blanks and your own imagination, really, to, to make the game feel correct, even though it's stuff that they could have worked in, but we sort of given them passes for years on a lot of this stuff. So it's nice to see that they're finally listening and working on it, and actually including things that I've wanted in wrestling games since I was a kid, like carrying 2 championships belts. I can't recall another game that let you do that. I'm sure someone will correct me and tell me that there were, but I don't recall any that let you carry 2 belts. So something like that is like something I literally have been wanting to see in a wrestling game since I was a kid, as I've been playing these games pretty much my entire life. So that's all I've got for you guys on the PC port. As I said, there's quite a few caveats, but if you're a big wrestling fan, then I think it's worth picking up, even with the 60 FPS cap and all that. Or if you have a next-gen console, grab it on there. Like I said, I grabbed it on PS5, and I wanted to try it out on PC, so I got the quote-unquote DRM free copy, if you know what I mean, just to do a video for you guys. But I bought like the special edition with like the Renegade pack or whatever it is, and the season pass was like $120 for the game on PS5. So I felt more than justified in downloading the DRM free version on the PC to share a video with you guys on it. So I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. Hope you guys all have a fantastic weekend, and I'll catch you next time for another video. Peace.